A lot of excitement today in South Jersey and also Philadelphia because Sixer fans see Joel Embiid continue to dominate and he should be an all-star. And then you get a win where you're trailing by 10 points with under 2:30 to go. And I know the Knicks stink, but just to have all those fans in the Wells Fargo Center after the city of Philadelphia has been through so much bad basketball the last few years, to see that excitement, it's actually fun to watch. So now let's go out to the phone lines. I bring in someone who's always great on this show from SiriusXM, Forbes, and also the Sporting News. He covers the NBA, and that, of course, is Mitch Lawrence, who joins us right now. Mitch, welcome back to the show, and how are you?
Oh, so basketball's back in Philly after about a 2 or 3 or 4 year hiatus. How are you?
I'm doing great. I wouldn't say that yet. There's still a lot of work to go, as you know, but I can't really blame the fans for being exciting, and I know it's the Knicks and they stink, but I like to see that excitement back, and they only have one win over a team that's currently at 500. There's still a lot of work to do, but you start to see it, and it's all because of the process, and that is Joel Embiid, of course.
That's all it is right now. When they get Simmons out on the court, Ben Simmons, then you're going to see maybe 2 building blocks. But right now it looks like they got 1 building block, and I'm sure they're just keeping their fingers crossed that there's nothing wrong with his feet and he continues to play. And I love the fact that he's talking about playoffs. That's what I want to hear from a guy who's going to be my stud for a few years. Talk about the playoffs. I know people talk about it's crazy. Hey, I think it's tremendous because that tells you a little bit about his mindset. He doesn't want to be in a losing situation. He wants to get into the postseason, and that's great to strive for. It's great to have goals like that for your young players.
It is crazy talk right now, but it is good. I agree with you, to have that vision and to have that expectation where the last few years, if you mention the word playoffs in the Sixers organization, people are laughing because there was no intent to really produce a basketball team with any type of winning capabilities. With Embiid, though, and he's a tremendous player on the court, we know that, but he embraces this superstar mentality, Mitch. And you see him dancing with the cheerleaders last night, the Shirley Temple stuff. It's just impossible not to like this guy.
Oh, he's great. I mean, it's great that Philadelphia got a player like that. Huge personality. That's what you want to have. And, of course, he backs it up with his play on the court. But it's so refreshing and nice to have a guy who's he got real just a – he's just a life of the party type of guy, and you want to just see him continue to improve on the court and keep the big smiles and the personality and everything he's got for you, and hopefully you can build around and have some real success down there. So it's always good. Through the years you've had guys like that. I mean, Magic Johnson was exuberant and a guy. This is a long time ago, and times have changed. But there's the flip side too. I covered the Knicks when they had guy like Stephon Marbury, who was all gloom and doom. So, you know what? It's always nice to have those guys who are around and want to have a good time as long as they win and know it's important.
It's been a tricky situation, though, for the Sixers just because they have a logjam at that position in the front court. And you take a look at Jahlil Okafor and Nerlens Noel. There's a lot of speculation, and it's been that way for over a year now. What type of trades are going to be made? Do you expect either one of those two to be dealt from now until the trade deadline in February?
It's possible. I don't know. There seems to be a kind of a glut of big men around the league. You got over here Brook Lopez. You'd think the Nets would want to get rid of him and get some assets for him finally. You got Tyson Chandler in Phoenix. People are talking about maybe he'll get moved. Andrew Bogut doesn't want to be in Dallas, And so you had the Philly guys. I mean, it's possible. I just don't know what kind of value you're going to get for either of them. But going forward for Philadelphia and Brian Colangelo, I think it's all about Embiid. If you can get something for either of those guys, you do it. I wouldn't exactly, Jahlil Okafor is an interesting player because he's a real throwback, and that's not in a good sense because he goes back to a time where an undersized guy with post moves was okay. In this day and age, you see the Knicks with Porzingis now. He missed a big shot last night, obviously, but a 7'3" guy who can move. And he's got athleticism, and he's got outside skills. Those are things that translate to today's game. Whereas Okafor's a guy, he plays the old style. He doesn't have a defensive presence, and he's an undersized center. So I think he'd be the logical candidate to move. But like I said, I don't know who's looking for a player like that in this day and age.
And that's the tough part, because if you take a look at either Okafor or Noel, all these teams know the Sixers are desperate. Unless if a title contender has some type of terrible injury to a big man right now, or one of these bottom feeder teams just want to take a flyer on one of these two guys, I just don't see what they're going to get back of any value.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing. Luckily, Philly's got a lot of draft choices that they're going to use, but I have no idea what what you can get for a guy like Okafor or even Noel. I mean, Portland's looking for players for their front court. Could they? I don't think they're going to give you. They're not going to give up anybody good from their starting backcourt like a Lillard or a McCollum for either of those guys. So you might get. I don't even. Here's the deal. Neither of these guys have done enough as pros where you say, well, 50 cents on the dollar would be good. What exactly has Okafor and Noel done so far?
Not much.
Just lose a lot.
No, yeah, you're right. And I happen to like Noel more than Okafor. I like that rim protector, and I think that rim protector is essential. I just want to get what you could get maybe in return for Brook Lopez, because you did bring him up, because the Nets are another desperate team. What's the return value for a Brook Lopez who has shown a lot of success in this league?
I mean, I was out at the Nets a couple of nights ago, and people are talking about why can't the Nets get 2 number 1 picks for Brook Lopez? I'm like, whoa! I can't believe you get 1 number 1
desperate.
Pick. Yeah, I don't know if the Nets could command that. I'm not sure. The thing about Brook Lopez is that he's proven. His big thing is that he stayed healthy the last couple of years. There was a point where he was breaking down all over the place, had to rebuild a foot, etc. And he's also kind of added the 3-point shot to his game. The deal with Brook is he's a 7-footer who doesn't rebound or really defend. So, I don't know what the Nets can get from him. All I know is this. They don't have any kind of assets going forward because of the trades that they made with Boston and how that all backfired. So I know you just don't want to give Brook Lopez away, but I would think they'd be able to get something for him, a 1 maybe. I don't know.
Does Brandon Knight get dealt anywhere? And if so, is Philadelphia maybe a possibility?
Well, you hear his name come up a lot. I don't know what they're doing actually or, exactly out in Phoenix. It looks like they're kind of tied more to Bledsoe, and Knight's name's been out there, and I think Philly's been mentioned. There are probably some other teams. There are teams that need point guards. I mean, the team that traded him, Milwaukee, they could use a point guard. I know Jason Kidd's going with Brogdon as a rookie, and he had problems with Knight. Tom Thibodeau, they're not happy with Ricky Rubio in Minnesota. I don't know if they'd be interested in Knight, but there's another team. The Knight's the type of guy who you hear, Rudy Gay is a guy who's available, Knight's available. We'll see. We're, still a few weeks out from the trading deadline. I had a chance to talk to people with the Atlanta Hawks the other night. Millsap, they claim isn't available, but they'll see. The problem there is that they can't get any good offers from Millsap because Millsap can be a free agent, so nobody's really willing to give up. So I think a guy like Knight, Millsap, we'll have all these names floated out there until the trade deadline.
Mitch Lawrence with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show, of course, from SiriusXM and Forbes, covered the NBA for a long time and still does a great job doing so. So we see some hope for the Sixers because of the transcendent player in Joel Embiid, and you hope that Ben Simmons is also that. When we take a look at the Knicks, there is no hope. You take a look at the Nets, there's no hope. We know that. In terms of the Knicks, and this has been a disaster, the Phil Jackson era in New York, and I wasn't a big fan of it from the start, and I respect Phil Jackson. Of course, you have to with the rings. I just didn't like the move by the Knicks. I know it's impossible to predict what Mr. Dolan is going to do. How much more patience does he have with the Phil Jackson era?
Well, I don't think Dolan's going to make any moves with Phil Jackson this year. I think they assembled this team to make a run to the playoffs. Now, Knicks fans are going, yeah, they can't win a championship. Knicks haven't been in the playoffs for 3 years. Dolan wants to get them back to the playoffs. So Phil made the move for Derrick Rose and Courtney Lee and the signing of Noah with that in mind, to get this team to be a top 8 team in the East. And I don't think they're a bad team, but I don't think it's all out of the realm that they could still make a run to the playoffs. We're talking about the Eastern Conference. There's one great team in the Eastern Conference and a very good team and a bunch of other teams. And the Knicks have played poorly here for the last 4 weeks or so, but they did start off 14-10. The problem is when your point guard goes AWOL, and basically that shows you that there's no accountability going on. There's no kind of a culture in terms of winning. An action like what Derrick Rose did would never be, they wouldn't put up with that with the teams that are established in winning, because players are always held responsible and accountable for what they do. And then Carmelo Anthony is getting ejected from games, which shows that he's not invested. That's a big problem. And so the only real hope here is Porzingis. And, when Derrick Rose on the court, he hardly looks at him at points. Last night, of course, Porzingis didn't help his cause by missing that shot. He could have iced the game. But, yeah, it's bleak right now. It's bleak for the Knicks fans and a bad loss to Philadelphia. But like I said, they're not out of it by any stretch in terms of making the playoffs. Now, once they get to the playoffs, they'll probably be an easy first round out. But that's what the owner wanted. He wanted to get back to the playoffs. Where they go from that, we'll see if there are moves involving whether Phil gets fired after the year. I don't know exactly if I see that. he's owed a lot of money. He makes $12-15 million. But obviously the roster, well, we'll see. I mean, Derrick Rose is a free agent. If Derrick Rose, I don't know if the Knicks are going to, there's a lot there. Now there's a hue and cry in New York. Don't re-sign this guy. We'll see what's out there. We'll see what the Knicks can do. I still wouldn't be surprised if Derrick Rose plays the rest of the way without giving him any trouble, without any more AWOL deals, and they re-sign him to a contract to bring him back. So a lot's up in the air here with the Knicks.
Well, I would put $150 million on the table right now that Derrick Rose is not getting a 5-year, $150 million deal. Correct, Mitch?
I'm not going to put anything by James Dolan and Phil
way.
Jackson when it comes to they look at that now. Going AWOL is a bad deal, okay? And he's got that strike against him. Now I'm not going to say 150, which he wants. Obviously, Derrick Rose. We all know that's what he talks about. And I had one GM tell me today, you know what? He's going to regret what he did come July 1st in terms of that AWOL. But if you look at it from the Dolan standpoint, he wants to sell tickets. Derrick Rose is still a big name. He might tell Phil Jackson, we're signing this guy for 4 or 5 years at top dollar. Look, the league is printing money. Players are making all kinds of crazy money. I wrote a thing about DeMarcus Cousins is going to get a deal north of $200 million, and he's no day at the park. So, yeah, don't be so shocked if Derrick Rose isn't back with some sort of major deal here.
In terms of Rose, and I understand if someone has a family situation, all you have to do now is just shoot the team a text. There's got to be something more to this, right?
Oh, I don't think it's a family situation at all. I think it's a situation where the 2 games leading up to the Monday where he disappeared and didn't notify the team where he was going, he was benched in the entire two fourth quarters, one in Milwaukee and one in Indiana, in back-to-back games. And I think clearly when you're in a push to make get a new contract, and your coach is now benching you in these fourth quarters, and your team is losing, you're pretty unhappy. And so I think that really is the start of it. I don't know if his mother really had a situation out there. I hope he's just not playing the mom card here. But I look at it from the standpoint of basketball and him being unhappy. And the amazing thing to me is that the Knicks didn't suspend him for a game because nobody goes AWOL in the NBA. You're right. When there's a family situation and a player has a situation with his brother, mom, whoever, and they text the team, these teams will bend over backwards to get the player to the family as soon as possible. I mean, he would have had James Dolan, would have given him his private jet to go out to Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. So he knows that, too. That's the other thing. Derrick Rose has been around for 8 years. It's not like he's a raw rookie who's not wise to the ways of the league. He knows if he's got any kind of problem, he can always go to Phil Jackson or Steve Mills, the GM, or even to James Dolan probably, and say, hey, I got a problem out in Chicago. And they'd say, they get him out there, and they would tell the media he's not with the team tonight. He's got it's a personal issue, and he'll be back for the next game. So they really just the whole thing smelled badly for him. Bad look, bad optics, and then really for the next 2, just to fine him, $200,000. He makes $21 million. That's tip money for him. It's not a big deal, but they should have really suspended him for a game because that just sends a bad message to the rest of the players here.
Did you happen to see the Knicks tweet last night?
No, what did they say?
Oh, my God. This is great. They tweeted out a picture of Rose and Melo communicating during the game, and they said communication is key. They deleted it very quickly, and they put up another tweet with the same picture.
Well, I just, from a basketball standpoint, Derrick Rose had a big offensive game. He was a minus 21. So he's a liability at the defensive end, which And then at the end, when the scramble situation after Porzingis failed to close the game out, Carmelo Anthony doesn't put his hands up at all when McConnell puts up the game-winning shot. I mean, it was a classic collapse. Blew a 10-point lead in the last 2 minutes. I'm glad the Knicks are sending out tweets during the game. That's ridiculous. But just the way it ended with Carmelo Anthony. But that's Carmelo Anthony. He doesn't even know the first thing about defense.
How do you evaluate his time with the Knicks?
Well, it's getting worse. When he first got there, he was still a premier scorer. Look, they went to the second round. One of those first few years he was there, I guess the second or third year in 2013, and they actually lost as the higher seed to Indiana.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't think he was going to take the Knicks anywhere. I thought he was a player who was a big-time scorer, but knowing from his teams out in Denver, here's a guy who needed a real bona fide leader to get him anywhere. He had that in Denver finally in Chauncey Billups when they went to the conference finals. The Knicks didn't have that for him when he got here. They eventually got Jason Kidd on that team, and that's where they had their success. and some other veterans. But I thought it was one of these things. It was all style over substance. I didn't think he's a championship-winning player. He's not wired that way. I really didn't. When they picked him up, I knew it was a deal where, yeah, they were bringing home the kid who, he's a Baltimore guy, but for their purposes, he was born in Brooklyn. Great. But, I didn't think they were going to go anywhere far in the playoffs because he's too tough to build around. In his prime, he was a very, very difficult player to build around because you need a lot of other components, including big-time leaders. Because, let's face it, Carmelo's a wonderful scorer, but it doesn't bother him to lose. You got guys like Kobe Bryant, who was a killer and just all about winning and winning first. And, I don't want to compare Carmelo to LeBron James, but LeBron James' whole attitude, you have other lesser players who are really upset about when they lose and stuff. This stuff rose off Carmelo. And that's the thing that's troubled me more than anything else is that he'll never waive that no trades because for him, it's not, it's more important to be that he's in New York and he's making a lot of money off the court and he's got a great brand in New York. And that's the stuff he prioritizes above the winning. So George Karl was right what he said.
In terms of the coach in Hornacek and the problems you're seeing right now, how much of the percentage of blame do you put on Hornacek?
I don't blame Hornacek for benching Derrick Rose if that's what he thought he needed to win. He's in a tough situation. He's got a me-first point guard, a ball-dominant point guard who's looking for a new contract. He has an established superstar who's on the decline in Carmelo Anthony. And they're trying to kind of develop this Porzingis kid who shows that he could be an all-star player, maybe even better. We'll see. Not an easy situation to come into. And he's got Phil breathing down his neck about, playing the triangle. And, I've known Jeff a long time. I know Jeff when he was a player in Phoenix and then Utah. And I didn't know if he was really cut out for New York in terms of the media attention, the scrutiny, the type of stuff that you face when you have a situation where a player goes AWOL. When you're in Salt Lake City and you're in Phoenix, you got a limited media crew. It's not a big crowd. It's not overwhelming. And if you have a problem with a player on your team, they'll ask you a question or two, but it's not all the only thing that people are talking about. Plus, there's the pressure of coming into New York and the team that really hasn't done anything since they went to the finals in 1999. So I had my doubts about Jeff in terms of handling that. As a coach, still a kind of a limited resume. Did okay in Phoenix for at least 1 year, and then what happened was out there, they pulled the plug on his talent. They sent off his talent. I'm not going to blame Jeff for what's going on here exactly. It's a tough situation. Now, let's face it. The one thing is he signed on for this. He came here. He knew nothing about Phil Jackson. They had never worked together, and he had never coached superstars with the egos that he has in the Derrick Roses and the Carmelo Anthonys, and he's never had players, I don't think, go AWOL. And he had a situation where Eric Bledsoe was a little handful out there. But, Carmelo Anthony's a guy who's been ejected from 3 games this year. He pulled the plug on himself before 1 game in Golden State, and then he quit in the Houston game after 7 minutes. So he's not invested. His 2 top players recently have shown you they're not invested. I'm not going to blame Jeff Hornacek for that. I'm going to blame really more like Phil Jackson setting up the team the way it is, and Jeff Hornacek is kind of an innocent victor/bystander here. I haven't seen anything wrong with what he's done.
Wrapping up with Mitch Lawrence, who joins us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. And just taking a look at around the rest of the league, what Westbrook and Harden are doing right now, Mitch, it's ridiculous.
Well, Harden's got the Rockets on a pace to win like 63 or 64 games.
Unbelievable.
That's, to me,
I didn't see that one coming.
Nobody did. I don't think Daryl Morey of the Houston Rockets, the GM, or Mike D'Antoni, the coach,
what did you think they would
either.
be before the year?
I didn't think they'd make the playoffs. I had them 9th in the West because I figured, Mike's system is going to be great for James Harden. I knew that because point guards flourish in Mike's system, whether it's, and I'm not just talking about Steve Nash going from an all-star to a 2-time MVP. I'm talking about Jeremy Lin and Chris Duhon, who was a nobody in Orlando, and then he came to the Knicks and he was an effective starter. Mike's got away with point guards. I thought Harden would have a monster year. What I didn't expect was that the other guys would fit in as well as they have. I'm talking about the New Orleans expats, the guys who played for the Pelicans, Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson. They've done great in that system. And the defense has been a lot better. It's still not championship-level defense or even second-tier level defense, but at least they're trying. Jeff Bisdelic, they brought in he's a defensive-minded coach from the Riley School. So that, to me, has been really the story of the year, is that Houston has come back from having an awful year where Kevin McHale got fired and James Harden was a real problem there, and Dwight Howard. And now they're, solid third in the East, and, they look like an interesting team.
In terms of the West, because we know the East, it's going to be LeBron's to win. We all know that. He's going to win it. And when I thought it was funny last week when they got Kyle Korver, everyone's saying, oh, now it's a lock they're going to win. Like, they were a lock to win before the year. Just as long as LeBron doesn't tear an ACL this year, they'll be fine. In terms of the West, I still expect Golden State to get there. But if it's not Golden State, do you go with Houston? Do you go with San Antonio? What do you go with?
Well, I'm not going with the Clippers, and I like the Clippers to get to the conference finals this year. But if Blake Griffin can't stay on the court, I'm not going to trust them. Even they got off to a 14-2 start. It would be amazing if Houston could get there. The one thing about Houston with James Harden is, they're going to be such a strong team, and we'll see how it translates to the playoffs. But if James Harden, I think he's a better closer than Kawhi Leonard or LaMarcus Aldridge. And that's one thing I worry about the Spurs. I worry about Tony Parker, his age, what he's going to be down the stretch. And I worry about Kawhi Leonard, who has been a finals MVP. But I worry now that Tim Duncan's not around, really who can close games for those teams, because that team last year against Oklahoma City neither could. So I still like Golden State, obviously. They've just got so much talent. They're going to overwhelm people. But, yeah, it's a two-horse race. And Cleveland in the East, it should be a cakewalk. And getting back to Kyle Korver, when that trade was made and they said, you know what, this is a great fit for Kyle Korver, Cleveland, everybody's a great fit in Cleveland because LeBron James makes you a great fit. Keep that in mind. Anytime anybody goes to Cleveland, LeBron will make you a great fit.
No doubt about that. Before we let you run Mitch Lawrence, what do you think Dwight Howard's thinking when he sees what's going on in Houston right now?
Oh, I think he's happy in Atlanta. I don't think it troubles him at all. I think he's one of those guys who he's not, I don't think he's bothered by the fact that in Atlanta they're sending off players like Korver and, Paul Millsap's the last of the Mohicans there from their conference finals team a couple years ago. And I know the joke going around is he's the MVP of the Rockets because he's no longer there. Let me tell you something. Dwight Howard, he goes through this stuff, and he's just worried about statistics of his own, getting rebounds, and he's worried about stuff he shouldn't be worried about, but he's not worried about. And it's all about personal achievements where he should be worried more about the team stuff. But I'm telling you, he ain't worried about the Rockets at all.
Mitch, I always knew you were great talking basketball, and of course, because you graduated from Temple University. But if there was ever a doubt today, you just definitely made that very valid on this show today. So I appreciate the time. Great stuff.
Temple guys stick together, right?
There we go. T for all Temple, right, baby, Mitch.
Appreciate it.
There's Mitch Lawrence, of course. Graduated from Temple. I graduated from Temple. So you always like to get those Temple guys on the show. 609-919-9200. Fun stuff with the NBA. Hey, this Embiid stuff, it's fun to watch. He's just such a really great player. And you know me, I don't use the word great. I don't just throw it around there like a or a like when you're talking. It takes a lot to throw around the word great in my vocabulary. And Embiid is great, not only on the court, but off the court. He's great on social media. He is a fun personality. And he is going to be a transcendent player in this league as long as he can stay healthy. And you can't wait to see when Ben Simmons gets on the court and when they continue to add on more pieces. The Knicks, you know this. The Knicks are a mess. They are a disaster. Yeah, can they still make the playoffs? Sure. Big picture, though. What is that team winning anytime soon? Nothing. What are they going to win in the next 10 years? Nothing. And this Phil Jackson era has been a disaster. An absolute disaster. And in terms of the finals, yeah, I still think we're on a collision course to see, and this is no earth-breaking stuff, but I still think we're on a collision course to see Golden State and the King, LeBron James. And that would be a fun one. 609-919-9200. Round 3 of that, baby. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Fox Sports 920, the Jersey. We'll take a quick break. Time right now in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios. 5:40 when we get back. Got to squeeze in a little Jeff Collins talk, Chopper Nation. And also, the Eagles are trolling Chip Kelly again. We'll get into that coming up next, and a bizarre story that Chris Fowler just tweeted out. More of the Zach Gelb Show when we come back, everybody. Don't go anywhere.